to the stage, Emleigh!
She needs to do any of my stuff. You might know.
Tonight's fun. Umberto sends his apologies. He can't be here again, but he just did a show in Brooklyn. He's a little tired. Plus, it's almost Halloween, which means it's time for the traditional, heartwarming Halloween story that I wrote a few years ago. Some of you may have read it. For some of you, get ready. It's a love story. I haven't looked at this one forever. As a person, George had always been the reserved sort, the kind of man who didn't like to draw attention or step on anyone's toes. As a flesh-craving zombie, however, he had left all of that behind as he kneeled on the ground, chewing on someone's toes. He suddenly felt a tug on the body in front of him. He protested when the deceased foot was ripped from his mouth. Turning to the source of this irritation, he saw through the one eye that remained in its socket, a vision more appealing than 1,000 rotting, blood-stained corpses. She had ashen brown hair, tangled and matted with the internal fluids of her victims, that perfectly accented the decay of her face. It was obvious that she had been dead for quite a bit longer than George. The gray-green flesh of her cheek had been torn, leaving a maggot-infested gap right next to her full, blood-covered lips. She responded, shoving a stray kidney into her mouth. The dulcet tones of her seductive grunt caused one of George's remaining appendages to stir. One thing was for sure, this was more than just rigor mortis. George groaned, reaching his single arm out to the exposed bone on her shoulder. She flirted back and tilted forward to gnaw on his elbow while his hand traveled down to roughly grab what was left of her breast. His strong, firm fingers plunged through her skin and the decayed boob easily detached, leaving her ribcage behind. She repeated as he licked around what had once been her nipple, before devouring his new prize in one squelchy gulp. The foul femme ripped George's last arm from his shoulder and lurched forward to playfully bite off his earlobe. Was all George could manage to say while she impaled herself on his stiff corpsicle. Determined yet clumsy, she rode George's rigid member like he was a camel on fire. She howled in decomposing ecstasy. George was lost in his own pleasure, screaming, while his cannibalistic concubine rocked back and forth, up and down. After a while, the monotonous yet maddening rhythm began to reach its peak. They moaned in unbridled, undead unison. Unfortunately, the force of George's reanimated seed and the violent convulsions of the monstrous maiden atop him combined blasted his sensitive organ right off, shooting deep into his lover. As her womb had been mostly consumed by various insects, the phallus continued on to be lodged in her throat. Eagerly she swallowed and looked at the dismembered carcass beneath her. She said hungrily.
Yeah.